This week on the show, the Patriots open training camp, the Red Sox are looking to add to a potential World Series roster, and Tiger chases destiny. We've got all that and more coming up. Calling It starts right now. Welcome to the Calling It podcast. Alex Barth alongside Alex Lebowitz, back on a Monday here after our Wednesday show last week. And Lebowitz, what a great Monday it is, because it is, I guess we can call it, the first week of football season. Training camp opens league-wide on Thursday, but here we are right on the doorstep. We made it through the summer.
We did. You say it gleefully. I'm kind of the start of football season is bittersweet for me because I love the summer. There's people who complain about the hot weather. Give it to me. Give me the hot weather. I want it to be humid. I want it to be sticky. I do love football though, and that's something that eases me into the fall and the winter. So I am excited, but summer's closing. It's
a nice kind of balance, and I agree. Summer's the best season. It's not even close, but football season starts for people like us, people who follow the team a little more in depth. But even when football season starts, air quotes starts, you still have a month and a half of summer left, right? Yeah. And then when the regular season starts, that's kind of when I get that bittersweet. All right, here we go. Like there goes late nights outside grilling, listen to music, bug bites.
It's not as bad. Like football season's great. It gets me through the worst part of the year. It's the end of football season, February 2nd, February 5th, whenever that day is. Oh, yeah. To opening day baseball for me. But still, I'm excited. I think this year there's a lot of crazy storylines with the Patriots. There's a lot of questions that a lot of people have on this team. But still, I think they're considered one of the two favorites for the Super Bowl this year, which is pretty amazing considering all the drama that we've witnessed. It
was an off-season like no other, and there's kind of two schools of thought that we're going to go into training camp, and it's just going to continue. It's going to continue to be a mess. The Super Bowl hangover, the Malcolm Butler decision, Brady and Belichick's beef, that we're just going to kind of continue to see this downward slide for the Patriots. And then there's the other school of thought that, it's been the off-season, so there's been nothing else going on. This has dominated the headlines. They've had nothing to do but talk to each other and talk smack through the media. And once they get back to work, we're back to normal. Here we go. It's football. Put your head down. Let's go. I'd like to think I'm in the second camp. I'd like to think I'm in once training camp starts, we're done with all the bitterness. But I don't know. There's something in the back of my head telling me that it's not just going to turn off. There may be less of it, but, the first time that, Gronk is open in 7-on-7s and Brady throws the ball elsewhere, or the first time that Brian Hoyer takes snaps with the first team offense because Brady had to tie his shoe or whatever, like it's going to turn into World War III.
Oh yeah, I mean you're always going to deal with storylines getting exploding. That's just the nature of sports media in 2018. I think it all comes down to winning though. If the Patriots win, and this is cliche, but it's the truth, if they win, you won't have nearly as much of the drama. If there's a hiccup, which there's probably bound to be, considering you have no more Nate Solder and Edelman is going to be suspended for the first 4 games, that's when this stuff starts creeping towards the forefront. And we saw it last year. Even with winning, this stuff is still going to be talked about. So I think it's inescapable, and that comes back to the fact that it hasn't really fully been addressed. So I'm looking forward to seeing if it is addressed, which it probably won't be, how they look in general. But the reality is it's going to be another Patriots season. They're going to be a top team in the AFC.
Just from the training camp point of view, and yes, I think if they start winning, it will kind of go away, but the Patriots aren't a team that, there's like I don't know, the Lions, for instance, or the Jaguars going a couple years back, the Jets, the Dolphins. They can play an encouraging preseason game, and that's a win. Everybody gets really excited. Some rookies look great. The Patriots can't really win until October. I'm even going to say in September, like when the Patriots lose in September, people get pissed, but we all know September's another preseason, right? They get stronger as the year goes on. They're not going to have that kind of win until October. So just from the training camp point of view, it looks like this stuff could take over. That being said, and I've said this a million times, the whole purpose of this show, right, is X's and O's, game planning, that kind of stuff, team building. We're rising above all the drama. So Well, everybody else yaps about what Brady and Belichick are texting each other. Let's get into the actual training camp stuff. Let's get into what they're going to look like as a football team. We'll go big storylines today, and then obviously as camp goes on, we'll kind of get into more specific things. But there's two position groups that I'm going to be keeping a close eye on in training camp this year. And that is the wide receivers, and that's the defensive backs, specifically the corners. I think they're fine at safety. Obviously, Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung, I don't have many concerns with that unit this year. The corners I am worried about. Obviously, losing Malcolm Butler is something that's not going to help. And the wide receivers, I look at the wide receiver depth chart, and it's a little bit thin for my liking. So I don't know if you feel the same way, if you have another position group that you're keeping an eye on.
Probably not the wide receiving group. I think definitely the secondary. I don't think you can help but look at the secondary with the absence of Malcolm Butler and have questions. But probably a couple. One is the offensive line. Again, that absence of Nate Solder and putting Shaq Mason at that blind side, it's going to be a rough transition, and Dante Scarnecchia can only do so much. And another one is the linebacking core. I think this defense is going to be very strong. But will that defensive line be able to make up for the lack of talent in that linebacking core? I don't know. I'm not all that worried. I think that's going to be a weak part of the team, just like it was last season. But it comes down to that defense. You know, Tom Brady's going to make it work with whoever he has in regard to weapons. So the secondary, that transition, that linebacking core, all that said, the offensive line. That's probably the one I think that's going most underplayed. They got a lot of young guys who are coming up, a year older, a year better. But Nate Solder not being there to protect Tom Brady it's going to be a tough one to swallow.
So we'll start with the offensive line. We'll hit all four of those groups today. We'll hit on them all briefly because obviously we haven't seen much, so there's not much we can talk about outside of speculation. But the left tackle conversation is an interesting one because you mentioned moving Shaq Mason out to left tackle, and that may be the solution, and that's what they did in OTAs. But there were certain guys that weren't there at OTAs. I think Shaq Mason's a good, plan C, plan D at left tackle, but I don't know. When we see the first team offense on Thursday, I would hope Shaq Mason's not that guy. Now, whether it's Adrian Waddle, who looked good last year while he was healthy, whether it's Trent Brown, who they got from San Francisco, whether it's Isaiah Wynn, I think it's those three guys. It's got to be one of those three guys at left tackle. I'm hesitant to disturb Mason, Andrews, and Tooney in the middle because that's been such a great group. I'd like to see them go outside of that to get that tackle. If I had to pick one of those three guys, I love Isaiah Wynn. I talked on draft night. I thought he was the guy. That being said, there is a transition for him to make playing center, guard, tackle, and tight end in college. I think for this year, they're going to give Adrian Waddle a chance to win the job, but I would go with Trent Brown.
Yeah, I think that taking a guy who's been in college, who has moved around the line but primarily played guard, and moving him to tackle at the NFL level, that's too much of a transition for a guy like that, for a rookie to make. So it's going to come down to one of the veterans. Trent Brown is definitely someone who caught my eye. He's massive.
He's huge.
He's a big man.
Did you see the picture of him next to Mike Reese?
I did not.
Look that up. It was like a couple months ago, but look that up.
And Mike Reese is not a big man, so I'm sure that was a funny-looking picture. But his question is his work ethic. Does he want to play here? Will he respond to a guy like Dante Scarnecchia and Bill Belichick? If he does, then I think this offensive line will be in a decent spot. But that's a big question mark. And if he isn't the guy, is Adrian Waddle the guy? I don't know. The problem is they don't have a lot of size on that offensive line relative to the rest of the league. And you got to protect Tom Brady. Obviously, he's great at getting rid of the ball quick. But without Danny Amendola this year, without Julian Edelman for the first couple games, or first 4 games, it's going to be tough to be able to, have those quick releases.
And I heard, I got to talk to Sebastian Vollmer last week, and he told me, and this was something I thought stood out, that Tom Brady's best offensive lineman throughout his entire career has been Tom Brady. The fact that he can get the ball out quick, he can read the defense, he can make the adjustments at the line, and part of that, like you said, is the quick release. So not having Amendola, not having Edelman, will transition now to the wide receivers. That is what worries me with this group. Chris Hogan is an outstanding receiver.
He's
not Danny Amendola, right? He's not a quick release guy. Julian Edelman's going to be suspended. I mean, I look down this list. I don't really see a quick release receiver on this list outside of maybe Braxton Berrios.
You know who's going to be the guy this year, and I'm calling it right now. And I'm not a big college football guy. I didn't see him play a ton, but from everything I've heard, I think Sony Michel is going to be a massive contributor in that offense through the first quarter of the season.
So I would like to see something, whether it's Sony Michel or James White. I think either one could do it. Lining one of those guys up in the slot, because they actually have some size this year. Jordan Matthews, Kenny Britt, Philip Dorsett's back. They have speed and they have size, but they, without Edelman, don't really have that interior guy. We'll see what kind of role Berrios plays. I think he's going to make the team, especially with the Edelman suspension. But to me, this all hinges on him, because somebody has to develop as that third down, fourth quarter guy that Danny Amendola was. As much as I love Edelman, especially with Amendola gone now, when he's back, he's the guy defenses are going to lock onto. Now, we haven't mentioned Rob Gronkowski in all of this, and we should, but Rob Gronkowski's not going to play 16 games. Even if he's primarily healthy, he's going to miss a couple of games just as a precaution. I think we know that. So who is that third down, fourth quarter threat? Can Jordan Matthews emerge? Can Kenny Britt emerge? Can Philip Dorsett turn it around? Are we going to see a guy like Riley McCarron, who people were high on last year on the practice squad? I just don't know. Could it be Cordero Patterson? Now I'm reading the roster, which I don't mean to do. But my point is, there's a lot of good. They have a lot of good receivers outside of Julian Edelman. I don't think that. And Edelman's a very specific kind of player. Outside of Julian Edelman, I don't think they have a great receiver. Danny Amendola at times could be great. Chris Hogan can be too, but in a different way. But I don't see a guy on this list who's consistently great outside of Julian Edelman.
And I think the Danny Amendola thing really comes into play during the postseason, because he's great during the regular season, but he's not someone who sticks out, on the stat sheet. So I don't think they're going to miss him all that much, during week 1 through 16. That said, the guy who I think is going to be his replacement is the next in line. That's Chris Hogan. It's his third year in the system. He's becoming more comfortable with Tom Brady.
But then who replaces Hogan? Because Hogan
got
was
Malcolm
so
Mitchell.
key in his own. Are you counting on Malcolm Mitchell being healthy?
I don't know, but Braxton Berrios is on board. I don't think Tom Brady having enough weapons is going to be a problem at all. I think he's going to make it work, and I think there's just bigger problems on that team. We also have to see how a guy like Braxton Berrios comes along and how these newly acquired skill positions players in general mesh into this offense.
The one interesting guy for me, the wild card, is Cordero Patterson, because obviously we know he's an excellent kick returner, but we saw them do it at times last year with Brandon Cooks and a guy of his speed. By the way, congrats to Brandon Cooks for being set for life. We saw them try it with Philip Dorsett when he was on the field with his speed. Kind of go back to that offense they ran 2001 through 2004 with David Patton and Deion Branch, the jet sweeps, the end arounds, putting that speed receiver in motion from slot to slot. Cordero Patterson is as good of a guy as any, because he's a bit bigger than Brandon Cooks. We saw what happened to Brandon Cooks when he tried to take on defenders.
Try to hurdle him.
Right. Patterson's he's a bit more built. He's a bit more of a unit. So I'm interested to see what they do with him. I think we'll see him get a good number of carries. I think there could be times this year where Cordero Patterson's playing running back and Sony Michel or James White, like you mentioned, could be lined up in the slot. So that's an interesting guy for me. Let's flip over to the defense now. You had mentioned the linebackers. This is one where I've been defending this pretty much all summer, in that I'm not too worried about the linebacking core. I'm more worried about the cornerbacks. Are the linebackers great? No. But I'm okay with them. So I'll let you go first. Lay out what you're worried about, and I'll see if I can poke holes in it.
And I'm not super worried about it, just simply because they're not really worse than last year. Like, who did they really lose? Shea McClellan, he was cut, but he didn't play at all. They have everyone they had last season, and Dante Hightower was hurt too. So with him returning, I think the biggest question is his health. If Dante Hightower gets hurt, that linebacking core is screwed. I'm sorry. You don't have the same secondary, so your defense has already stepped back from what they were this past season. That's really where my concern lies. I think you have guys like Trey Flowers, Dietrich Wise, Derek Rivers coming back, and a lot of guys on that front line. But I don't know if we'll be able to make up for the fact that this is a thin linebacking core. And again, it all hinges on the health of Dante Hightower. We saw with Gerard Mayo, once he got to this point in his career, he started breaking down. We're starting to see with Dante Hightower, and that's why I was calling for the Patriots to draft a linebacker in an early round this past NFL draft. They didn't, but still, that's the only reason. Other than that, I think the secondary is, there's probably more of a concern there overall. but it really comes down to that one player on defense.
They did take linebackers in rounds 5 and 6. I think the defensive line is their best unit besides quarterback, obviously. Mm-hmm. And you're right with the Hightower thing with the injury, but I think people talk about, once Hightower goes down, they're screwed. I wouldn't go that far because the Falcons game this past year, that was the game he got hurt, right?
Yeah.
Hightower, he didn't play most of that game. And they were still great. I think Kyle Van Noy is the most underrated player on this team.
He did a great job.
He's an outstanding player. He can cover. He can get after the passer. He's highly intelligent. I think Kyle Van Noy is great. Getting Marquise Flowers back. Mm-hmm. We saw what he was at the end of last year. I think he had 4 sacks in the final 5 games, something like that.
Don't put him in coverage.
Marquise Flowers, though, is a good player. He plays a role. They will get Harvey Lange back, who was the priority UDFA last year. He was the one who got in the car accident. You're rolling your eyes at me, but no. He showed signs in the preseason. He showed he can play. Is he Donta Hightower? No, but I feel a lot better with him in the middle if Hightower goes out than a guy like Landon Roberts. Landon Roberts is the worst linebacker on the team at this point, outside of Nicholas Grigsby, who's a special teams player. But And that's the final point I want to make. They go out and they draft Juwan Bentley, who was a 3-year captain at Purdue, the first guy to ever do that. Run stopper extraordinaire. Not really quick. Not going to do much in coverage, but that's why they drafted Landon Roberts. And even though Landon Roberts hasn't worked out,
he's a 6th-round pick. He's not bad for that.
And I always loved the pick because of the reasoning behind it. He led the nation in tackles. He was great against the option, which means his football IQ is very high. He's a natural leader in the locker room. He had everything but the NFL skill, and that's something you can develop. He had everything you can't teach. So you take him, you bring him in, you see if you can teach it to him. Now, it never worked out. He never developed, but you're kind of getting the same thing in Juwan Bentley. And now they have a blueprint. Okay, here's what didn't work with the Landon Roberts. Here's a very similar player. Let's see if we can mold him and get him to work. So I think they upgraded in the middle behind Hightower. I think their outside linebackers are in great shape. Yes, losing Hightower would be a critical blow, but I think one, they're in better shape. These are kind of the same thing, but they're in better shape behind him so they can rest him more if they need. Mm-hmm. They can play him in the middle, which is most of the time when he gets hurt, it's rushing the passer on the outside. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not, but they can play him in the middle because they have these good outside linebackers. They have depth behind him up the middle so they can rest him. And if he does get hurt, I feel a lot better with, we haven't seen him yet, but I think I'll feel a lot better with a group of Juwan Bentley and Harvey Lange than I will about a Landon Roberts.
Yeah, I'll say this. They didn't take a step back in that linebacking core this year. They're no worse than they were last season. And they made it work. They made it to the Super Bowl, albeit with Malcolm Butler. But that defensive front is going to be a lot better. And I think overall, dare I say this Patriots defense might take a step up from last season.
They haven't had a top 10 season defensively in DVOA since 2006. So there is room to grow. The one group that could stop that, and we both talked about this, Lebowitz, when we started, is the cornerbacks. Obviously, no more Malcolm Butler. He's out. They go out. They get Duke Dawson in the 2nd round, Keon Cross in the 7th round, a couple other undrafted guys. I won't go into my full spiel about undrafted corners with the Patriots, but what I will say is that, what was his name? The guy from Virginia Tech, who they took a couple years ago in the 2nd round.
Razai Dowling.
Right. Razai Dowling was a 2nd round pick. Terrence Wheatley was a 2nd round pick.
Cyrus
Jones was a 2nd round pick. Malcolm Butler was undrafted. Johnson Batamosi was undrafted. Jonathan Jones was undrafted.
Eric Rowe was a 2nd round pick for the Eagles.
Right, but that was another team. My point is, the homegrown corners, the undrafted ones have been pretty good.
Yeah.
The drafted ones, high round draft picks, have not. So the undrafted guys this year, J.C. Jackson, A.J. Moore, Keon Crossing kind of falls into that. The safeties I'm fine with. I am worried about who that second corner is going to be because Stephon Gilmore showed at the end of the year he can be a number 1 corner. I had my doubts about him, but fine. He's your number 1. He's not better than Malcolm Butler, but he's still a very good player. That's fine. He's your number 1. Cool. After that, I don't know if Jason McCourty is a number 2 corner. Like, he's an okay number 2. Jonathan Jones is truly a slot corner. Duke Dawson's a slot corner. We don't know what Cyrus Jones is going to look like. Eric Rowe, again, kind of like McCourty, Jason McCourty. Is he a number 2? Maybe.
He's a borderline.
But, yeah, he gets hurt a lot. He can only guard a certain kind of wide receiver. I'm worried they don't have a number 2 corner going in. They have some depth. They have a lot of good slot corners. I just don't know who that number 2 is going to be. And for me, the competition's wide open. Obviously, Jason McCourty and Eric Rowe are the favorites, but I think that's anybody's job to win.
Well, Duke Dawson. He could be him if a high-round cornerback draft pick ends up panning out. That's a big if, considering the Patriots' history in drafting at that position. But never say never. Maybe he comes in and he adjusts really well to the NFL game, and he fills that void. Maybe the Patriots had an eye on him before even deciding what to do on Malcolm Butler, and that played into their decision to part ways with Butler. Who knows? I think that McCourty would be fine as a second corner. I think that Rowe would be fine as a second corner when you have that, cornerback by committee type of thing going. I'm more worried about Stephon Gilmore and being able to lock down the opposition's number one target, which I think he's capable of doing it, especially with that help in that safety crew. But there's going to be a lot of growing pains there, and there's going to be a lot of mistakes. And I think it comes down to whether or not that Patriots pass rush is good enough to get to the quarterback so that he's not going to have to, guard his opponent, for 5-6 seconds downfield. It all comes back to that front seven, specifically that defensive line, and whether or not they can do their job. Overall, is it a step back going from Butler to McCourty to Jason McCourty? Definitely it is.
Yeah.
Definitely is. But they've had worse secondaries in the past, and they've gone deep with worse secondaries in the past.
It's going to be up to the safeties, like you mentioned, I think. Specifically the group of Devin McCourty. We have to differentiate now.
Yes.
Specifically the group of Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung, and Teron Harmon. I think and we know they'll probably go with the 3 safety base again this year. I would imagine
They'd
they
have
will.
to, yeah.
But to me, it's up to those guys. And, yeah, we touched on just about every group, so we'll talk about the defensive front really quickly here because it's been a long segment, but what do you expect? We haven't talked football in months. Who is your favorite addition to the defensive front this offseason? We'll just go with that. Just a quick one, and we'll talk about the defensive front again probably next week once we've actually seen them.
Who's my favorite addition to the defensive front?
Any you want me to run? I mean, they added Claiborne. They added Danny Shelton. You could say they added, air quotes, Derek Rivers.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Derek Rivers personally. I think he was hyped coming into last year, and unfortunately he was out for the season. So I think that's the person I'm most excited to see. Danny Shelton, that'll be fun. You got Malcolm Brown. You already got players like that on that team. Probably Derek Rivers. I want to see what he's capable of. And when you match that with Trey Flowers, who's coming into his 4th season, guy who will be borderline All-Pro if you ask a lot of people. I think overall it's going to be a great season for that defensive front, and it's going to be even better for a guy like Derek Rivers to transition when you have so much support around you.
So I would say keep an eye on, if you go to training camp this week, when they do 3rd and long drills or obvious passing drills, 2-minute defensively, because this is a unit I'm hoping they put together this year. As good as their defensive tackles are, obviously when you get into like 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 12s, I want to see Wise and Rivers as the 2 ends with Flowers in the middle, because he has a little bit of experience playing defensive tackle, and him rushing on the inside is something he excelled at in minimal reps. So I think that group on 3rd down has the potential to be devastating to offenses. Potential. We'll see how it works out. It works great up in the brain. It would work great on Madden. Let's see how it works in practice, but that's the group I really want to see put together. They've done an outstanding job drafting on the defensive line in the last couple of years. Obviously, all 3 of those guys have to stay healthy. They all have some injury issues. I think all 3, I believe, have torn their ACLs already, and they're all under 25. I know at least 2 have. I don't remember if Flowers has. I don't remember if Dietrich Wise has. But that group, I'm really excited to see those 3. All right, this has been like 20 minutes of football, and we got a bunch of weeks left, so we'll break it off here. The Red Sox are still playing, but notice how they get the second segment this week. Doesn't mean it's not important. We'll touch on the Red Sox trade deadline propositions when we come back. This is Calling It, powered by CLNS.
Calling It is brought to you by American Broadcast Coaches, training the next generation of media talent and communicators. For more information, check out AmericanBroadcastCoaches.com.
Welcome back to Calling It. Alex Barth alongside Alex Lebowitz as we switch gears to the Red Sox. The trade deadline coming up. That is all the talk. And, of course, all the talk around the trade deadline, despite having a center fielder who's struggling to hit above 200, despite having a catcher who's hitting $125 in the last 3 weeks, is relief pitching. Lebowitz, you just said off the air, when you see Thornburg and Kelly, no duh. But this is just coming across from Jerry Krasnick that the Red Sox are serious about acquiring relief pitchers. They have some of their top executives scouring the market. That's the quote from Jerry Krasnick, scouring the market for relief pitchers. A couple already off the board. Brad Hand went to Cleveland, and there was another one yesterday, right? I believe, was that a rumor? Maybe that was just a rumor. Britton. I'm thinking of Britton. Britton was just a rumor. So, again, there's still some names out there. The issue is, do the Red Sox have the ammunition to go get those guys? I think yes, because I think Michael Chavis should be on the table. Like, the weird argument for me here is that we've seen what Dave Dombrowski's done to this team. Michael Chavis or no, is this team going to be good in 5 years? Are they going to be competitive in 5 years?
I mean, they got a lot of young talent that's at the major league level. Theoretically, I think they will be. It's not like that hinges on Michael Chavis.
Right, exactly. Like Michael, and even if it did hinge on the third base spot, Rafael Devers is 21. And even if he doesn't work out, Bobby Dalbec, who they drafted last year, has hit 23 bombs in Salem. So he's coming. He's not major league ready yet, but he's coming. Devers is there. Why are Red Sox fans so insistent on holding on to a guy who just came off an 80-game suspension for PEDs and hasn't been able to hit since?
Probably because he was a good power hitter. He's exciting. I don't know. I think that most fans become infatuated with prospects, and Dave Dombrowski is the opposite. He's like,
he's infatuated with them as trade pieces.
Yes, it's trading bait. And that's what he'll probably use Chavis for. But I think you got guys at the MLB level that you can trade without losing too much, considering the depth in the outfield. Get rid of Jackie Bradley Jr. You're not going to sign him anyway, and you could stick someone else out there. I think the defensive ability, it's great, but I think you don't necessarily need it in center field. But yeah, he's probably going to end up trading someone that some people are going to get upset at. But when you are a team that's on pace for 113 wins and all you're missing is that one piece in the bullpen, you got to do it.
So I will say this about Chavis, and then we'll kind of get into the actual relievers. Yes, he's the number one prospect in the organization. And when you have that title, people are hesitant about trading a player. Number one organizational prospect. He's not on the MLB top 100. On no other team would he be the number one prospect. The Red Sox have very few prospects, and I don't even know if he'll be the number one next time they reset the list, which I believe is after the trade deadline. If not, it's at the end of the season. There's a couple guys who are candidates to pass him, and we don't need to get into. As Felger would say, you can do that on your own time. But Chavis is not a true number one prospect. He's a good player. Now, how much of that was the juice? We'll have to see. He has upside, but if the difference is winning or losing a World Series this year, if they think a guy, whoever it is, whether it's Britton, whether it's Bearclaw, whoever it may be, is the difference in winning a World Series this year or not, then yeah, I think you make the move. And then that leads us to our next point. Is there a guy, and who is that guy, that is the difference in perhaps, getting past the Yankees, getting past the Astros, getting to the World Series, or winning the World Series?
I personally like Zach Britton. I know he's had a down year. He's not what he was a couple years back. But he's someone who has played well in the postseason. And if it wasn't, were they playing? The Indians a couple years ago, and Buck Showalter decided, you know what, I'm not going to go with Zach Britton, the best pitcher, let alone closer in baseball at the time. He's a guy who has shown that he can perform at that level, and he can perform probably in big markets. Not that Baltimore's a huge market, but I think he would excel in Boston to an extent. So that's the guy that sticks out to me. I'll admit I'm not super well versed in the relievers that are available right now, but it's clear you got to make some move. When you see, again, a guy like Joe Kelly and Tyler Thornburg pitch like they have this year, you obviously need to make a move. It can't just come down to Craig Kimbrell. So something's going to happen. It's inevitable. And whoever they get, there are people available out there who are better than what they have. And I think that's the main point to make. So
Matt McCarthy, actually, friend of the show, Matt McCarthy, 985 The Sports Hub, put together a list of some potential trade targets last week. I actually got into some people on Twitter, with some people on Twitter about it. So just some names to throw out there. Kyle Bearclaw from Miami has been an interesting name. He has a 1.28 ERA this year. But again, I feel like there's guys, and it happened with Britton. It sort of happened with Hand. The price with Hand was always high. But with Britton, he's obtainable. They can move Chavis for Britton or whatever. They can trade Swihart for Chavis. And then all of a sudden other teams get involved. And they know they can top the Red Sox. And all of a sudden Zach Britton's getting like 3 top prospects. So I see that happening with Bearclaw. Familia went from the Mets. Fernando Rodney, again, a guy I think they can get for cheap, but will some team outbid for that? The one other name I've heard is Adam Conley, who's also in Miami. He's been a good player, but he's a lefty. He's kind of a lefty specialist. My worry with that is that just sounds like Fernando Abad all over again. You're getting a small market, 0 playoff experience, left-handed pitcher who has good numbers, but that's because he's primarily been used as a specialist. I could do without that move. I don't need another Fernando Abad.
And not only that, you're going to be sending a lefty in your starting rotation of bullpen. So you're going to have that void filled come playoff time regardless. You don't need a lefty specialist, let alone a lefty at all. Zach Britton is a different story, of course, because he's more than just that.
No, Zach Britton is a legit closer.
Closer, yeah.
Right.
And when you match that with Craig Kimbrell, that'd be lethal. I think we're getting too fixated, though, on the fact that it has to be a prospect traded for these guys. I don't think it has to be. I think it can be a young guy who is on the big league club right now. The 2 names that people have been floating around, again, are Swihart, which hinges, again, on Christian Vasquez's availability moving forward, and Jackie Bradley Jr. You just traded for Steve Pearce. You got Benintendi, who doesn't play as well in center field, but he can do it if need be. And obviously, you have Holt and Mitch Moreland. You have depth there.
Right.
Not Mitch Moreland, J.D. Martinez. You have depth in that outfield is my point. You can trade a guy. You could trade 2 guys if you needed to. And I think top some other teams who are going to trade mid-level prospects who haven't even proven their MLB ready yet. So the trade's there. The deal's there. It's just a matter of if a team that's up and coming like the Marlins is going to want to deal for a 27-year-old who has a big contract due.
So I guess, and look, we closed the Red Sox, I think, this way last week or 2 weeks ago. Let's close the Red Sox segment with it again because I want to do this again here. Jackie Bradley Jr. and Blake Swihart, you know where I'm going with this. I see you grinning, for Billy Hamilton and Matt Harvey. And it's something, if you follow Rob Bradford on Twitter from EEI, he's really picked up on this. I don't feel like a lunatic for shouting Matt Harvey's name out into the clouds now because I'm seeing other people bring it up. But again, Matt Harvey and Billy Hamilton for Jackie Bradley and Blake Swihart. And if you have to throw in some mid-level prospect, you do it.
So is this assuming that Matt Harvey would join the starting rotation?
Yeah.
Who's moving down?
In the regular season, Pomerantz. And then in the playoffs, when you have to bump it down again, Price.
Okay. You could do that. I don't know. I don't know if I want a guy like Matt Harvey on the Red Sox. I don't know how great it's something about a guy who was an A-list celebrity, essentially, going from that to a middle of the pack starting pitcher, legitimately probably a 3 or 4 star.
The Mets ruined his arm.
You can say that, but I just think that there's an ego there that would mess with the Red Sox chemistry, perhaps. And you already got one of those guys in David Price, who I think is a complete detriment in that regard. I want a reliever. I don't want a starting pitcher. I don't want to bulk up that starting rotation. I want a setup man who can come in there in the 8th or in the 7th and shut down, the middle of any lineup. That's what I want. And I think Zach Britton would be the much better move. And I'd be willing to give up the same exact deal. Swihart and Bradley. I don't care. Get rid of both of them. You're not going to resign
either. So you give up Swihart and Bradley for Zach Britton?
I would give up at least Swihart and maybe a Chavis or a mid-level.
I would say if you give up those 2 guys and you don't get a bat back, then you're stretching because then their bench
it's addition by subtraction.
Their bench is short enough. But then who are you bringing? Then you're looking at putting Rusney Castillo back on the 40-man.
Brandon Phillips.
That's a good point, and I think doesn't play the outfield, doesn't catch. But yes, he is somebody who should be out.
Brock Cole can play the outfield when he comes back, and he's someone who can play anywhere on the field. You're going to have so you got Bradley, Betts, Benintendi, Martinez, Steve Pearce, and Brock Holt. Those are 6 outfielders right now.
I don't want Steve Pearce is not. He's 35. He can play the outfield, but is he an outfielder?
He can play left field at Fenway. My dad's 63. He can play left field at Fenway. So
all right, let's get your dad out there. I want to see that.
No, his shoulders are shot.
My dad couldn't. He listens to the show. I'll say that. My dad couldn't.
You started an argument. So they have depth in the outfield. That's why I have no problems giving up Jackie Bradley Jr. In fact, I think they should have given him up a while ago. If it means getting Zach Britton. When you're in a year, when you're playing as well as the Red Sox are playing, you're on pace for 113 wins. You do what's necessary, and overpaying for a setup man, borderline closer, I think it's a worthwhile thing to do, considering the position the Sox are in right now.
All right, we could go on and on with this. I haven't brought up Durbin Feldman yet somehow, but I do want to touch on the Open really quick before we wrap it up, because golf as good as it's been in a long time over the weekend. We'll talk about that on the other side. This is Calling It, powered by CLNS.
Calling It is brought to you by American Broadcast Coaches, training the next generation of media talent and communicators. For more information, check out AmericanBroadcastCoaches.com.
Welcome back to the Calling It podcast, powered by CLNS. Alex Lebowitz, ready to talk some golf?
I am.
A little golf.
Always.
We got as entertaining action as we've had Sunday morning at the Open out overseas. Looked like Tiger may finally have his. He was the individual leader for a little bit. He ends up finishing, though, tied for 6th. He was 5 under the winner. Francesco Molinari, the first ever Italian to win a major. So congratulations to the country of Italy, I guess. Why boo?
I don't know him, so I want.
That's fair. Like, I wanted the playoff. That was all I really wanted, because you had a bunch of guys at 6 under, and then Tiger was 5 under, and it was okay. If Tiger can get into a playoff, we'll be in good shape. You had Rory charging and Justin Rose charging. The two, I know England, Ireland, UK. It's all a complicated political thing, but they'd rather have somebody at least from their side of the pond win than an American. I don't know how they feel about an Italian, but it was just captivating the whole way through. I didn't even get to take my usual golf nap.
Well, it's kind of funny because I say boo. It's the Tiger Woods effect, though, because I say boo because I wanted Tiger Woods to win it.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything that you can compare it to in sports where you root against the underdog just so one of the most prolific golfers of all time can win again. Just because you want to see him back to his glory days. I think it's because we all want to.
We all want to relive it.
We all want to yearn back to our childhood.
Nostalgia. It's member berries.
It's member, exactly. So
remember Tiger Woods?
I was gonna do it, but I stopped myself.
Remember Elin Nordegren? Ooh, I remember.
So it's pretty amazing, and he keeps teasing us. I heard someone say something once, and I don't know if this is true, but it kind of makes sense. Gambling addicts. They like being close to winning more than they like actually winning. And I think Tiger Woods fans like to watch him get so close to winning over actually seeing him win, because it makes the next tournament that much more exciting. The PGA Championship is going to be amazing.
Can I take that one step further?
Go for it.
Is Tiger suffering from a little bit of that? Not that he doesn't want to win necessarily, because I think he does want to win, but go back to the shot. What was it? It was out of the bunker after he hit the spectator and the ball bounced back into the bunker.
That went way up in the... Yeah.
No. After, so he hit that incredible shot out of the bunker.
Yeah.
Next hole, he tries to go for the green. He hits it off. He hits it into the crowd, and it bounces back into the bunker. Yeah. And he could have chipped onto the green and taken the par. I think this was on 14. Instead, he takes this really aggressive shot, barely gets it out of the bunker, and then tries to putt it in from the rough and misses. And it cost him a stroke. He could have parred the hole, went for birdie, got a bogey. And that one shot, he finished 3 back, but the last 2 holes he was playing overly aggressive because he had to. That shot may have made the difference. I think Tiger has in his head that when he wins, if he wins, it has to be in this glorious, spectacular, old-school Tiger fashion, because that's what he was trying to do on the back 9 on Sunday. And it lends credence to the theory, and I said this when we talked about it during the Masters. Does Tiger, he can still be elite at times. That shot out of the bunker was otherworldly. But does he have the stamina to stick through it on the back 9 on a Sunday with some of these younger guys who don't have the surgically repaired backs? Because he faded there. He faded down the stretch. Now, whether it was his decision-making or he got tired, and it did look like he was over-swinging, there was something on that back 9 that wasn't right.
I think that this progression that's, it's little by little, but it is progression nonetheless that we've seen, has proved that he is capable of winning a Masters. He's capable of going 4 rounds and playing strong golf. I think that part of that comes down to his fading is probably more decision-making than anything else.
So you think it's more in his head down the stretch than physically?
I don't know if it's in his head. I think you're looking at a guy who has his legacy cemented already. Again, one of the greatest golfers to ever live, has more money than he knows what to do with. He doesn't need to come in 3rd place to provide for his family.
He's a competitor.
he wants to win. So
Right.
I think he wants to be more aggressive. So when he tries to go for the green instead of chipping it onto the fairway and having an easy lie, that's what he does. He goes for it because he knows he's trying to get first place, not second, not third, not fourth, not fifth, first place. So maybe it comes back to that. One thing that I took away from it is that he is capable of winning at that stage, even on a difficult course like where they played. So I'm excited to see him in the PGA Championship. He has one more go at it this summer.
Yeah,
and I think we'll see him. I think we'll see him in the hunt.
The ratings for the PGA Championship are going to be insane. I can't wait to see what the ratings were Sunday morning.
Oh yeah,
for that, and that's back-to-back Sunday mornings. We had the World Cup final and then this. Do you think the guy yelling in his backswing that was wild? I don't think it affected it, but that was come on, guy. Come on.
It's golf etiquette. I mean, come on.
It's a gentleman's sport.
If he hits it and then you go mashed potatoes, that's funny. Don't do it.
I love it when people yell after the swing. Let him hit the ball.
What about who was the guy's name slipping me? There's a baby. There's a baby.
Oh, somebody. Yeah, who brings their baby to the effing golf course?
A couple reasons. A couple things. One, a stray ball. That kid could get pelted right in the face. Number two, he's right behind the guy who's in the rough on the 18th hole, trying to compete for the lead. Oh my God! What a moron!
It's like people who bring their pets on vacation. The baby doesn't know it's at the Open. It's not going to have this glorious memory of being at the Open. Get a sitter. Leave the kid at home.
I think that's the only way a baby can
Asinine.
That's the only way a baby can receive death threats. You talking this?
Oh man, the people coming for the guy who yelled during Tiger's swing. One other thing that happened that's going to kind of get put under the radar, but I want to bring it up. Jordan Spieth finished 4 under, tied for 9th. He was in the lead at one point on Sunday. Yep. We got another Spieth collapse. I know he's won since, but I still don't think he's over that incident at the Masters.
I think he just lacks consistency a lot of the time, and I think that's probably something he's going to deal with throughout his career. It's a good thing that it's not something that has affected him every single tournament he's been in. Again, he's won since that original collapse. That said, he's a great golfer. We'll see him atop again, and I just don't think that he is at that elite level where he comes into every tournament and he's going to be a top performer every single time out there. He's going to have some rounds where he's just not himself, and I think that's something we've kind of come to expect from him.
So we'll see pins and needles for the PGA Championship. I do hope this kind of changes. So next year, the PGA Championship will actually be in May. And the Open will be the final major. Okay. So it's a good thing that's next year, because that would really suck if we saw a Tiger like that and then had to wait till April to see him in a major championship again. But, we'll see it's going to be interesting. It is going to be interesting at the PGA Open. That will be it for us this week. Next week, we'll have more Red Sox trade deadline thoughts. Maybe they'll have made a trade. I think the deadline is Wednesday next week? Tuesday, Wednesday?
Tuesday, I think, is the 31st.
Tuesday? Okay, so we'll kind of, any last-minute stuff the Red Sox may do, we'll talk about that. Or if they've already made a move, we will discuss that. Obviously, more training camp thoughts. And anything else that happens, we'll be on top of it. Follow us on Twitter for updates, @Callin' It Podcast. Check us out online, clnsmedia.com. And follow CLNS Media as well, @CLNS Media on Twitter. For Alex Lebowitz, I'm Alex Barth. This has been the Callin' It Podcast. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.